Hi, creative friends. This is Sreya, and thank you so much for being here. So, I received a few comments of people showing interest in diving a little deeper into this book, and I'm really super excited to tackle this because, when I started my YouTube channel, one of the things that I wrote I wrote a manifesto for myself, for my intentions, and one of the things I wrote about was how I wanted to dive in deeper into the whole creative process. So this is a great entry point into going into the deeper layers of all the, blocks and opportunities, and just the entire creative process. Like there are so many different things that we all face. And so I'm just going to share what I have learned along the way, as well as my personal story. So today what I'm going to do is I am going to focus on our inner critic. Now, I think we all have an inner critic, and it just seems to show up at the most inopportune times. And one of the ways it shows up is when we paint. And it can show up in the strangest ways. That's what I have found. And the lady here, her name is Damini, and I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right, but she talks about how, the different ways that our inner critic shows up when we are art making. And it can range from suddenly feeling tired or bored or distracted. And one of the things that she really focuses on is that when we encounter our inner critic, we come up on some form of resistance. Because when you think about it, like just say you're painting and all of a sudden you get bored or distracted or whatever, that is a form of resistance. And it's a sign that your inner critic has kicked in and it's trying to put you back in a self-limiting box. Now, what she says is that in order to challenge your inner critic to, render it kind of to bypass your inner critic, you need to go towards your resistance. And I wholeheartedly agree with this approach. So I'm going to share with you a specific story that I encountered. And actually, I've been thinking back on it, and I might have purchased this book with the intention of diving in deeper and painting more intuitively. So what happened is about 7 or 8 years ago, which is about the time I purchased this book, I was wanting to paint faces that had no facial features, or they had distorted facial features, or they were colored figures, so say red or blue. And what I kept on encountering was not only a mental block, but it went way, way deeper than that. Like I was coming upon emotional blocks, and I could viscerally feel it in my body as fear, resistance, judgment, etc. So what I decided to do is to just paint, to override my inner critic and paint the figures that I wanted to paint, and at the same time journal about my experience. So actually write down all these different like emotions that were coming up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a journal, my journal from about 7 or 8 years ago, when I was doing what the lady in this book is suggesting, and I was painting, because that's what she says, go towards your resistance. So I'm going to show you some of the figures that I started painting. Now, I know this, like looking back on it now, this is not a big deal to me. Like I could totally paint this and I wouldn't encounter any kind of resistance. But when I did this, like you guys, I cannot explain how deep all of these feelings of resistance, like it was like where I would do something and then I would have to stop because I would have to get out my journal and just write, okay, well, why are you feeling this way? What, like I would just have to articulate what was coming up for me. So I'm just going to show you some of the you know, my spreads. And this was like about 8 years ago. And, you know, I go back to painting features on there. And again, I go back to painting features on here. But to paint a faceless figure was a big deal to me. And I'll get into that in a minute. So you guys, I'm going to try and explain this in as simple a way as I can. Because, and I say that because, you know, we're dealing with things that are in the subconscious, in your unconscious mind. So English is my first language, but my mother and my grandmother spoke both English and Tamil, and my great grandmother only spoke Tamil, and she did not speak a word of English. And I spent a lot of time with her. And what I have come to understand, and this is the way I can relate it, is that I have these packets. I kind of see them in my mind's eye as packets of information, and I tend to think of them as energy, and it has no language attached to it. But they are beliefs and sounds and memories and dreams and fragments of ideas and images. I have those things that were passed down to me when I was really, really young, and probably throughout my childhood, but especially in the ages between 0 and 5, that's when your subconscious mind is like completely open. And we absorb all of these things into us. And perhaps at some point, because we were all pre-verbal, we were all downloaded with these little bits of information. And for me, all of these uncomfortable feelings and thoughts that would come up, they were related to these packets of information and energy that I was downloaded with, that I was kind of like, I look at it as my subconscious mind, and then somebody or people wrote their beliefs and ideas and all of this stuff onto my subconscious mind. And it stems from, I figured out for me, the fact of me painting these faceless figures, and say a figure that was blue or red, it comes from, a lot of it comes from Hinduism, where only the gods and the goddesses have like, are painted blue. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't Indian artists who can paint all different sorts of colored figures, because I've seen that. But for me personally, I had all of these energy blocks that I had to clear. And the way I cleared it is by painting and then writing out, you know, all the things that were coming up. And it was a very tedious process. It took me quite a while. Like, this journal kind of was over the course of, I want to say 2 or 3 years. So it wasn't an easy process. But once I journaled, and once over time I could see all these patterns that were coming up, I could see those beliefs and images and fragments and memories and sounds and all of these things. I could rewrite them. I could use them to my advantage. Now, I'm going to show you another thing that really helped me. It was working in this book over here, Painting the Feminine. Now, I started working in this book about, I want to say about 4 years ago. It's when Damini Celebre first sold it on her, through her Instagram page. So it was about 4 years ago, I want to say. And again, you know, I started painting like figures that don't really look like a person, you know, like they're blue, or they're faceless, or, you know, this is a red figure and look at that, like, you know, this has all this like imagery on her face. So I started kind of working in this book, and this loosened me up a lot, but I had to do the work, you know, in this book over here, in this journal, and I had to do the work of journaling about it, and, you know, coming to an understanding of why I had all of these blocks to begin with, and then to rewrite all of that, kind of like to reconfigure my subconscious mind, if you will, or just shine a light on it and then say, oh, but does this work for me? You know, why do I even believe that now, you know, etc., etc. So working in this book really, really helped me. And now I'm working on a brand new journal. And for the first time, this was just a couple of days ago, and I posted it on my shorts, but I'm actually painting faces that are gray. And this is like a first for me. And I'm actually really, really loving it. But if I had to have done this, like, say, you know, 7 or 8 years ago, like, this would have sent me into a full-on panic attack crisis mode. Okay, like, I cannot explain to you how all of these I don't want to say they're just beliefs, because they are so much more all encompassing, but they are just all of these I guess imagery, and this is where the subconscious, the archetypal, everything I talk about in Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, all of these things that live in our subconscious mind that don't have language to them. We can give them language, but they kind of live in a realm that doesn't have language. So even me speaking it out now and trying to explain it using language is a bit difficult, because in our subconscious mind, you know, where we have imagery and ideas and beliefs, and oh, it's just a fragment of this, and it's just a color, and it's a line, and it's a feeling in my body, it lives in my gut, it lives in my heart, it's my you know, it's love, it's fear, it's something that's uncomfortable. Like, all of those are, they don't always lend itself to language. Like, sure, I journaled about it and I had to give it language for me so I could understand it. But if I had to do this like 8 years ago, I would have had a full-on meltdown. Like, I couldn't do it. But now I'm like, oh my God, like, this has opened up a whole new world for me. Like, I love it. It just feels so moody and elegant, and there's a simplicity to it. There's a depth to it. I'm just so enthralled with it, if you will. So I don't know, you guys. I hope that this is helpful in some way. I've tried to explain it in the best way I possibly can. I know that this video is probably not going to be for everybody, but it is a very real example of a creative block, the resistance, the inner critic that was coming up when I wanted to depart from the way I was painting, which was very stiff and stilted, and I wanted to paint more from an intuitive place. You know, I wanted to paint from a place that was just freer. You know, it wasn't so oh my God, I have to do this and I have to do that, and I'm looking outside for external validation, and my inner critic says I can't do this, and I'm being guided by you know, fear and judgment and all of these, you know, I have to do it this way. This is a very real example of what I did to break out of that. And I used different things. This book was a big part of it. And then I combined that with, you know, me painting and journaling about it, like actually writing it out. And then over time, rewriting all of that stuff, I guess, you know, those packets of energy, as I call them, I had to kind of look inside those packets, figure out what was going on, and, you know, maybe like discard some of that stuff and say, hey, somebody else put these things in those packets of energy and gave it to me, and I've been holding on to them, and now they don't serve me anymore. Some of the things I kept, but a lot of the things I did not. So I'm sorry, you guys, if this was not clear, if this was all over the place, but you know, sometimes the creative process is very messy, and you know, it is what it is. So if I've been unclear about anything, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. I hope that this video has been helpful, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.